What's up, Duval? It's your favorite former Jaguar, Bucky Brooks, and this is Believe in Jaguars, podcast dedicated to all things Jaguars. We're going to talk about the team. We're going to talk about the kickoff to OTAs, where we have an opportunity to really see them. They let the media in, so we had a chance to check out the Jaguars for the first time. And I'm just going to give some general thoughts about what I saw, not necessarily team personnel related, but team related, the new energy, the new feel, the new vibe that was around the program. So let's start with OTAs and what OTAs are. Organized team activities. Really, it's an opportunity for the Jaguars to practice. And so at this part of the offseason, we're in phase 3. So the teams could get together. You could do your individual, your team, your 7-on-7. You could do most of the things that you normally do in practice. You could compete a little bit against one another, but you couldn't have what we call those high intensity one-on-one sessions where you have wide receivers and DBs going. You didn't have the O-line and D-line squaring off in pass rush drills, but you did see the teams come together and work against one another where, they were giving each other's looks and they were able to execute the plays on the field. First thing that stood out to me, the energy of the team was there. It was apparent that this team is kind of hungry to kind of get they're eager to get the bad taste out of their mouth based on how the season finished. We have seen Doug Pederson stand in front of the podium on multiple times in press conferences and just talk about last year wasn't the way that the team wanted to finish. The team wants to be in the conversation, not only of winning the division every year, but being a team that expects to be in the postseason each and every year. The moves that were made in the offseason were designed to make sure that that continues to happen going forward. There's been this, I would say, kind of maybe this undertone that this team wanted to make sure that they brought in mature players that were professional, that go about their business in the right way, and that the team raises not only the collective IQ, but raises the collective level of professionalism and, I would say, standards around the program. I can tell you, in just watching the team practice, they look like a highly organized, well put together team. They not only look like it in terms of physically, like height, weight, speed, size, the way they were moving around, but just the way they went about their business with the tempo. There was an energy, there was an intensity to the way that they practiced. Not saying that it was lacking in previous years, but I could tell that there was really an emphasis on the way they move around and the way that they approach their business. And talking to Doug Pederson, he talked about, it's important to understand that OTAs are not about competing, it's about teaching and developing. It's about teaching everyone the scheme, teaching them how we practice, how we go about doing the things on the field and in the meeting rooms. And then it's about developing the individual players so that when you do come to training camp and it's time to compete, they can compete at a high level and get it done. I could tell that the teaching has certainly been there. When you look at the offense, break the huddle, the way they snap to the line, the way they go in and out of those things, the way they're moving down the field, the way the receivers are catching the ball, then getting up the field, the way Trevor is executing and going through the play fakes and the handoffs after handing the ball off to the running back. There has been, in my mind, an added emphasis on making sure that you do all of the details correctly, a greater attention to the detail, particularly on offense, to ensure that the execution is at a high level. Now, some observations on the offense and what I saw. Trevor Lawrence looks good coming off the injury. Threw the ball really well. The ball is sharp. The tempo, the velocity, all of those things were on point. The accuracy in terms of the ball placement he's putting the ball on time. He's hitting the strike zone. Guys aren't having to move around much because the ball is off the mark. He was solid. Really, really looked good. The pass catches on the perimeter. Had a chance to see Christian Kirk back. Evan Ingram back, that first unit where you see BTJ kind of join in the mix, looked really good. Gabe Davis wasn't available, but we will eventually see him join that unit. But overall, they look like they're supposed to look in terms of like the speed, the interchangeability between the wide receivers. Even though they weren't doing much, you could just tell that this group has a lot of juice to it. And I'm going to say this, not competitive drills, but BTJ looks as advertised. Really easy in terms of the way that he catches the ball, the way that he moves around. You can see where he could be a guy that could take the top off the defense, but you also can see how he is able to work in the middle of the field doing some things. He looks like a good get. I would say First things first, he certainly passes the eyeball test as a high-end playmaker. Offensive line, the usual suspects in places. They came off the ball well, but it's hard to really judge the offensive line in this stuff because the physicality is certainly not there because you're not competing. But I will say, just in terms of the way that they operated, the energy, the connectiveness, the cohesion, that was there. The execution for the first day was really there. And you can see it. Not a lot of balls hit the ground. Everything operated pretty smoothly and efficiently with the first unit. When it came to the second unit, my eyes were certainly affixed on Mac Jones because when you have a former first-round pick come over, backup quarterback, a guy that is expected to be the QB2 or QB3, you just kind of want to see how does he look, how does he interact, did he appear to have the energy and the enthusiasm that you want from the backup quarterback? I would say yes. Mac Jones threw the ball pretty well, had plenty of bounce in his step. I noticed the interaction that he had with his teammates. He seemed like he was upbeat and jovial and trying to find his way. That is very, very positive. It didn't appear to be any beef or any issues between he and Trevor. They both went about their business, so that was good. Mac Jones has an opportunity to, I believe, be the number 2 quarterback. His talent certainly stands out. He and C.J. Beathard stayed after practice, worked on some things. I thought it was good overall for Mac Jones in terms of his debut for us to have an opportunity to see him. I believe Mac Jones has value, even though they didn't pick up his 5th-year option. His value is in potentially giving the Jaguars a number 2 quarterback that would allow Trevor Lawrence, if he ever was banged up, to really sit out, get healthy before he comes back. So maybe we can avoid some of the stuff that happened last year where he kept coming back into the lineup. And maybe I would say the cumulative effect of all the injuries negatively impacted his play. Whereas if someone else, if they felt better about C.J. Beathard or they felt better about the backup quarterback, they would sit him down for a couple of weeks, let him fully get healthy, and return to the lineup. But overall, Mac Jones looks very, very solid. We'll see what it looks like when the pass come on, when the competition flies. But I would say that he certainly didn't look out of place as a backup quarterback. Lastly, when it comes to the offense, a lot of conversation in recent weeks about Travis Etienne's role and why they need to get Tank Bigsby up and going in terms of in the rotation. You can see that, we had the press conference before practice. Doug Pederson talked about Travis Etienne and how they just want to keep him fresh, make sure he's ready to go, make sure he is playing his best football down the stretch. And one of the ways to do that is to split some of the carries and some of the workload with others in the program. And even though Dearness Johnson is there and is a really good football player, Tank Bigsby is a guy that may give the Jaguars something different than they've had. Physical runner, a guy that can attack it downhill between the tackles, a guy who's pretty rugged in his playing style and approach. And I'll be honest, someone who could be a nice yin to Travis Etienne's yang, in terms of being complementary in the backfield. When you look at Bigsby with the ball in his hands, he has a lot of intriguing and impressive tools. Now it's about the coaches finding a way to get him into the rotation, get him into the game, and allow him to do things that are really positive and productive for the unit. So as we continue to monitor the running back room in the situation, a lot of eyes will be on Tank Bigsby and what can he do to put himself in a position to be a key contributor to this team and for this team going forward. But in watching him run around, he certainly appears more confident, more certain in what he's doing. And when you have more confidence and you're very decisive because you know what you're doing, you tend to play better and play faster. He should be one of the players that has a huge jump going from his first year to his second year. Really excited about what he could be and what he could do going forward. We talked about the offensive line. I'm going to spend more time talking about the offensive line on our Wednesday podcast when we kind of dig into what happened over the 2 days that I was here. But overall, the offensive line continues to be a work in progress. They probably have the most pressure on them to play at a high level because you can't have Trevor Lawrence getting knocked around, and you must be able to run the football for this offense to operate efficiently. But I would say I like the way that Cam Robinson was bouncing around. I like the way that Anton Harrison was moving. And when they put the pieces of the puzzle together for that offensive line, I think this offensive line has an opportunity to be a very solid offensive line, one of the more, I would say, maybe in the upper echelon, maybe a chance to be in the upper half of the league. And if they play at the upper half where they are protecting Trevor and they're able to run the ball effectively, this offense has a chance to be everything that we thought they would be last year. So overall, so far so good when it comes to the offense. But now let's talk about the defense, because the defense is really where all the changes really happen. And listening to Ryan Nelson at his press conference and then talking to him before that presser, I'll say this. They went into the OTAs, or this part of OTAs, with two goals in mind. They wanted to make sure that everyone understood the assignments and everyone understood how to align. Wasn't worried about competing, wasn't worried about defending the Jags offense. He wanted to make sure that everyone could get lined up and they knew how to execute the plan. He also wanted to make sure that guys were exposed to great teachers, the new coaches that came in, that got the guys up and going, that the stuff that they worked on in Indo translated to solid play in group and teamwork. I'll say this. You can always measure a coaching staff and coaches by the way when you step out on practice. Does it look organized? Does it look like they are having effective building blocks to what is going to be kind of the competition part of practice at the end of practice? Meaning, when you go to practice, when you're looking at individual work, are the individual drills leading to what the guys are going to be asked to do in group work? And do the group work or the group drills or conversations or walkthroughs, do they lead to what is going to happen in team? And can they execute all of those things where it feels like you're just building the players' confidence as they get into the team session? I'm going to say unequivocally, yes, they absolutely were doing that. When I watched the DBs from afar, the individual drills that they were doing absolutely matched up with what they were asked to do in 7-on-7 and then later in team. And what I could tell you is that in watching them go through a very detailed and rigorous individual period, that the emphasis was on footwork, it was on staying square, it was on being in the hip pocket of the wide receivers. That was the goal. When I watched him in 7-on-7, time after time again, I saw DBs in proper position. I saw them snug with the assigned receivers. I didn't see many busts, particularly from the older group of players. And I saw tight windows that quarterbacks were being forced to throw into. So that was positive for me, because what Nelson talked about in the presser, I actually saw executed on the field. They knew their assignment, they knew how to line up, and then ultimately they knew how to execute the assigned plays without fail. Now, they lost some downs and those things, but I didn't see many deep balls. I saw them keep everything in front, and I felt like the coverage was really snug and really tight. It looked like the scheme matched the personnel, which is always positive. Now, as we talk about the coaches, I had a conversation with a player that I thought was very interesting. He talked about, the coaches that are here, it appears that they know exactly what it is they want to get done, and the teaching matches what they want, meaning that when they install it in the classroom, when they talk about it in detail. It is very clear. It's very concise. There's not a lot of gray area to what they're being asked to do. They then follow it up by not only talking about or reviewing what they talked about in the film room, they then have walkthroughs that match what is being discussed in the film room. And then the drills, the physical drills that they're doing, matches up with the stuff that was being talked about in the room. And it may seem elementary and it may seem like simple Simon stuff, but what I can tell you is repetition is the key to everything. And the consistent repetition of drills that don't change over the course of the season allows a player and allows a unit to get better. And when I hear from players that the teaching is very clear, it's very detailed, there's not a lot of questions or ambiguity in terms of what is being asked of the players, my response from the players when I asked them back, they was like, oh, it's great because I know exactly what I can do, when I can do it, how I can do it, and what to do. That's ultimately going to allow me to play faster. And when you have 11 guys playing fast and 11 guys on the same page, that's when the defense can really play at a high level. The other thing that was apparent to me when I watched the defense, communication was at a high level. When I mean communication at a high level, it appeared that everyone was talking, they were communicating, they were relaying signals. There was a lot of chatter. Good teams over communicate. They communicate, hey, here's what we're in, here's what we're going to go to if something happens. That possibility or scenario will come up. automatically the conversation increased. Everyone knew exactly where to go. And you didn't have the who, what, why, or the hands up, like, what was I supposed to do? To me, that is huge, especially coming off of last year, where I'm gonna be honest, this team had too many mistakes in the back end where we saw guys running scot-free. There was a lack of communication, there was a lack of being on the same page. Whatever it is, they're really working hard to clean that up. And so when I was sitting there on the sideline, just listening, eyes closed, just listening, good conversation, a lot of chatter, everyone pointing out things. That was terrific to me. It really told me that Nielsen and Chris Richard and the other coaches have done a really good job of communicating what the expectations are and maybe raising the standards of what they want from the defense when it comes to just being able to talk and making sure that everyone is on the same page. Another observation, the defense right now playing musical chairs. So musical chairs is what we call when you're a coach or you're a coach and you tell the players you have to cross train and learn multiple spots. Part of doing musical chairs is you want to have a handful of players that can do multiple things in the event of an injury or a situation where you have to throw somebody into another spot. You have people that are trained to play multiple spots on the defense. That helps you to deal with injuries, to deal with unforeseen circumstances that can pop up in a game when you need to get out of a game, and it'll help. So, for instance, you see Chad Muma, Foye Oluokun, and Devin Lloyd bouncing around to multiple spots at linebacker. Doesn't mean that we know how the lineup is going to go, but it means that everybody got exposure to multiple spots. That gives you the freedom to do a lot of different things when you go into your different packages, whether it's your base package, your sub package, which can be your nickel or dime packages. It allows you the freedom and flexibility to put the best guys on the field at all times. Same can be said for the secondary. When you see guys bouncing around, Antonio Johnson, whether he's playing nickel or safety, Jaren Johnson being able to play, Jones playing nickel, being able to bounce outside, seeing all of these guys move around to multiple spots, to me, it's really important. It's important early because what you're trying to do is not only expose those guys to different positions, but as a coaching staff, you're trying to evaluate who are the best 11 for this particular package, who are the best 11 for our base package, who are the 11 that give us the best chance to win in these situations. I love that. And it's something that when you think about what the great teams and the great defenses have, they have that interchangeability because you have guys that are utility players, but are good utility players, not a backup that's being thrown into an unfamiliar role and he's not prepared for, but guys who are practiced at multiple spots and they're prepared to play multiple spots because that could be the assignment given this week. So far, so good. Without giving away any enemy secrets, I can tell you right now, there's a lot of conversation early about what is this defense going to look like going from a 3-4 to a 4-3, a four-man front that Nielsen wants to run. I will say that in just watching from afar, four-man front, two-high shell on nearly every play. Every time the defense lined up, they looked exactly the same. That is positive because if you can show the quarterback the same picture, but change the picture after the snap, that's when the confusion comes from the signal caller. By being able to line up in a four-man front with a two-high shell, with the corners taking like close alignments over top of the wide receivers, you eliminate the easy layups that have really plagued the Jaguars in the past. By having press coverage, you take away the hitches, the bubble screens, some of the high percentage throws that a lot of these quarterbacks are utilizing to ring up high completion percentages and good passer ratings. Well, now that's eliminated. By doing it from a two-high shell, but moving after the snap, whether it's man-free or whether it stays in some form of quarters or two-high defense, it prevents the quarterback from fully knowing what you're doing. I would say for the first day, they really look good executing that. Not a lot of misalignments. I don't know if I even saw any misalignments in terms of like egregious errors. Everyone on the same page, the first, the second, the third team, everyone lined up at the same spot. To me, it means that the teaching and the instruction has been very clear and every player understands what's being asked of them. All of that stuff is really, really positive. The last part that stood out to me was just the flying to the ball that we saw from the defense. It's a little thing, but it means a lot, and it mean a lot later in the year. I noticed that when they were going through team drills, um, and this is something that used to happen back in the day, but if I'm playing defense, when the runner gets the ball and they go through the hole on a team drill, defensive backs and defenders are taught to tag the runner up, meaning get to the runner, tag them off at the hips, be in a good football position that you would have to be in to make a tackle, but then let the runner go. I can tell you consistently, I saw 11 guys running to the ball and tagging the guy off on the hips. So when we think about the details and why the details matter, well, if you can get 11 guys to get to the running back, to get to the ball, to tag off at the hips, that means that when we get to the time we put the pads on, there can be guys that are in position to make the tackle. And when you combine that with consistent daily tackling routines where guys are tackling and the emphasis on good tackling and getting people to the ground, well, then you have an opportunity to play good defense. So after the first day and watching the first day of OTAs, I would say very solid job, very impressive job of the team coming together and everyone being on the same page. We'll see what it looks like tomorrow and going forward. But for now, the orientation, the first day, really good job by Doug Pederson and staff putting it together. Really good job by the players that were in attendance, showing up and being prepared and taking it seriously. And really good job executing the basics. Because if you can get the basics, it gives you an opportunity to play really well. And I think based on what we saw, a foundation is being put in place for this team to play better than anticipated going into the 2024 season. So that's day one at OTAs. This is Believe in Jaguars. Make sure you rate, review the podcast on all of the podcast platforms that you can subscribe to it. Make sure you tune in to the Believe Network on Fubo. Check out all of the great programming that we have when it comes to Believe in. And then just continue to come back here to Believe in Jaguars. I'm going to have the latest information, more insight, more behind the scenes information to talk to you as the Jaguars build a team that should be a formidable foe for opponents in 2024. Until next time, I am Bucky Brooks, and I will see you on Believe in Jaguars.